Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hope your day and your week are off to a fantastic start. Got a new day, which of course means a new NBA player prop video to share with you guys. But first, as always, people, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. It helps the channel grow, and it really does mean a ton to us. With a new day and another day of NBA playoff basketball comes some new opportunities to go ahead and make some money. I have 5 NBA player props to go ahead and share with you guys in today's NBA slate. But first, guys, before we dive into today's picks, a quick little recap of how we did last night. And overall, guys, not a good night, but also not a terrible night either. We went 2-2 last night. It's funny, we went 2-0 in the Celtics-Knicks game and 0-2 in the Nuggets Thunder game. So overall, 2-2 night. We did lose technically minus 0.10 units. So it was a very minor loss from a unit standpoint. But like I said, overall, not terrible. We did hand out a couple of winners. Unfortunately, we also gave out a couple of losers as well. So we can definitely do better than this, and we're going to try and do better than this in today's video. So let's not waste any time, guys. 5 NBA player props coming your way right now. All right, guys, jumping right into the outlier screen. Our first player prop in today's slate comes from Cavs-Pacers Game 2, 7 p.m. tip-off. I have 3 player props coming from this Game 2. Our first of 3 and our first overall, we're going Tyrese Haliburton of the Indiana Pacers over 13.5 rebounds plus assists. Now, before you guys jump to the comments and say, I don't bet Haliburton, I get it. Haliburton's been a risky player for the last couple of years, really, to bet on. Whenever you bet on him, he usually comes up short for you. When you don't bet on him, he cashes the over. Listen, I've been down the Haliburton road many times before. I've won a lot of money. I've also lost a healthy amount of money off of Tyrese Haliburton. But I'm riding with him here today. Over 13.5 rebounds plus assists. Minus 152 over on FanDuel. A little juiced there. A little high from a value standpoint, but still very valuable. 9 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 16.5 rebounds plus assists per game over his last 10 games, including 7 consecutive games. He's cashed the over, so pretty good numbers there. Even if you go and narrow it down the last 5 games, these of course being all playoff games. 5 straight, averaging 17.4 rebounds plus assists per game over his last 5. So the recent data is very strong, and obviously that's good because we look at the last 10 games. Most of these games now are playoff games or games that have a playoff atmosphere to them. So pretty good numbers there for Haliburton. But beside the really solid recent data, we also have really good head-to-head data here. 6 of his last 7 matchups with the Cleveland Cavaliers, including Game 1, which happened on Sunday. He's cashed the over. That's an 86% hit rate against the Cavaliers, averaging 16 rebounds plus assists per game across those last 7 matchups with Cleveland. So the recent data is phenomenal. The head-to-head data is phenomenal. You also throw in the fact that Garland is game-time decision, questionable. He may not play. He obviously missed Game 1 with a toe injury. If he's out, it's an even better matchup for Haliburton, who played very well in Game 1 versus Cleveland. If Garland doesn't play, I feel 10 times better about this player prop. Even if Garland does play, though, I still like this because a lot of these cashes that you see here are with Garland in the lineup. So I'm not too concerned about Garland, but obviously him being out definitely helps this number. The overall data, not as strong, 46% hit rate. 36 out of 79 games this year. He cashed the over, averaging 13.13 rebounds plus assists per game. But like I said, the recent data and the head-to-head data, I think, are strong enough to go ahead and tail this player prop. Minus 152 over on FanDuel, a little higher than I usually would like for a single bet, but still pretty valuable. All right, guys, our second player prop in today's slate, again, sticking with Cavs-Pacers Game 2, we're going Donovan Mitchell of the Cleveland Cavaliers over 33.5 points plus assists, minus 120, actually minus 115 on BetMGM. It is available on multiple sports books for varying odds, but minus 115 on BetMGM looks like the best odds for me. Again, it entirely depends on what sports books are available to you in your area. But for me, BetMGM minus 115, that's what we're going to rock with here. Now, to be fair, Mitchell did not play poorly in Game 1. I mean, he did cash the over. He had 33 points and 4 assists in Game 1. But ultimately, the Cavs lost. So I do think now, Game 2 at home in Cleveland, you're down 0-1. You cannot afford to lose both home games in Cleveland. You just can't. You can't go to Indiana in Game 3 down 0-2 in the series. You have to win this game. You have to go to Indiana at least even in the series. In order to do that, Donovan Mitchell, especially if Garland doesn't play, will have to rise to the occasion. Now, I'll be honest, at first glance, the data really isn't that strong. It really isn't. 4 of his last 10. The overall numbers on the year, 32%. This is clearly an elevated line as well for Mitchell. 24 out of 76 games, he's cashed this line, averaging 28.99 points plus assists per game overall this year. And this makes sense. You look at last year, actually, his line was higher last year. He cashed at a 48% hit rate last season. But part of that reason being, again, A, it's elevated, but B, the Cavs this year have kind of felt a little bit more like the Celtics from last year, where people have sacrificed, right? Some nights it's Garland, some nights it's Mitchell, some nights it's Mobley, some nights it's Allen. They've really been sharing the wealth here. But right now, in the current state the Cavs are in, Mitchell, especially again, if Garland does not play, Mitchell has to step up and carry this team because one more time, you cannot go to Indiana down 0-2. So yes, the overall data is not great. However, despite this line being elevated, the head-to-head data is actually pretty strong. 4 of his last 5 matchups with the Indiana Pacers, he's cashed the over, averaging 36 points plus assists per game across the last 5 matchups with Indiana. And again, that does include game 1, obviously. He had 33 points and 4 assists. They played 3 times this year. He's cashed the over in 2 of the 3. So pretty good head-to-head numbers there. And Indiana defensively, they're just not a great team. 17th in points, 12th in assists versus shooting guards, 21st in points, 11th in assists. So this is not a great defensive team. Mitchell, and he showed this in game 1. He can get away with what he wants in this series. Played about 34 minutes. It's probably going to be pretty consistent throughout the series. That he's going to play that many minutes. Taking a healthy amount of shots. He didn't even shoot the ball all that well either in game 1. He had 30 shot attempts, only made 13 of them. So there was room for improvement as well. And for potential assists, he had 8 potential assists, and he finished the game with 4. So there was plenty of opportunity for him to do even more, and he still cashed the line pretty convincingly in game 1. So I really like Mitchell here in game 2 as well. I like the matchup a lot. I think, again, game on the line. This is really important. I'm not saying the series is over if they lose this game, but it's going to be very difficult for them to battle back if they're down 0-2 with the next 2 on the road. So, very important game. I think Mitchell rises to the occasion for Cleveland here. That's our second player prop in today's slate. In our third and final player prop from this game, our third player prop overall, we're going Evan Mobley of the Cavaliers over 27.5 points plus rebounds. A lot of the same stuff I just talked about with Donovan Mitchell is going to apply to this Mobley prop. Again, very important game for the series here. They need Mobley to step up. Again, I'm also really banking on Garland not playing. Now, again, even if Garland does play, I still don't hate this spot for Mobley, but especially with Garland out of the lineup, I love this spot for Mobley. Now, very similar to the Donovan Mitchell play, the recent data, not very strong. Just 3 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 25.9 points plus rebounds per game over his last 10. However, unlike the Donovan Mitchell prop, when you go ahead and stretch the data out to the entire season view, it's actually pretty solid. 51% hit rate on the year, including playoffs, 39 out of 76 games. Mobley's cashed the over, averaging 27.58 points plus rebounds per game overall this year. So again, Mitchell, the data was pretty much bad across the board, except for the head-to-head department. For Mobley, pretty bad from a recent standpoint, but from an overall standpoint, actually pretty solid. And similar to Donovan Mitchell in the head-to-head department, the data is pretty strong here. 4 of his last 6 matchups versus Indiana, he's cashed the over. That's a 67% hit rate, averaging 30.17 points plus rebounds per game across the last 6 matchups with Indiana, including all 3 times he's played them this year. So a 100% hit rate, including game 1 of the playoffs, 3-0 versus Indiana. And it's a really solid defensive matchup here too for Evan Mobley versus power forward. You see here points plus rebounds allowed, 20th in points, 25th in rebounds. Pascal Siakam, great player, not well renowned for his defense. So really good matchup defensively for Mobley here. Again, game 1, like Donovan Mitchell, he did cash the over with 20 points and 10 rebounds. He played almost 36 minutes, so a healthy amount of minutes. I expect it to continue here in the continuation of the series. Now, the one thing that's a little worrisome is the fact that he didn't take a ton of shots. 13 shots is a healthy amount, but he did shoot 9 for 13. That's 69%. I'll go ahead and pause for the applause. 69% from the floor. Will he do that again? That's kind of the real concern here. Now, he did cash the line with a couple points to spare, but it wasn't like he blew through the line like he did here in this game, right, where he had 47. I don't think you can't really shoot much better than that. However, he is shooting across the last 6 matchups 63% from the floor, so it's not totally abnormal for him to shoot that well against this Pacers team. So that's the one area of concern I guess I would have here is the fact that, if he shoots even a little bit worse than he did yesterday, if he takes the same number of shots, we could be in a rough spot. However, the rebound chances, 13, one of the lower side of things. Again, they are bottom 5 in the NBA in terms of rebounds allowed to power forwards. I think he can get some more rebounds than he did last night, or on Sunday night. Overall, I think the matchup and the overall data is too strong to ignore here. And for minus 104 on FanDuel, I think it's pretty good value. So I'm going to rock with that as the third player prop in today's slate. And guys, we're about to hit the 10-minute mark in today's video. So before we finish off with the final 2 picks in today's video, please comment 10 down below. As always, guys, we appreciate those who watch through each and every single video here on the channel. Put a lot of hard work into this, and it means a lot when you guys stick around and watch all the way through. So comment 10 down below if you're still watching at this point in today's video. And wrapping things up, we got 2 player props coming from game 1 of Warriors Timberwolves, 9:30 p.m. tip-off. And this player prop, this is a guy who's burned me already just in these very playoffs a couple of times already. We're going Naz Reid of the Minnesota Timberwolves over 16.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. We're getting this one for -118 over on BetMGM. Now, I will be honest, the data across the board is the best of any player prop in today's video. Solid across the board. 7 of his last 10. He's cashed the over, averaging 18.2 PRAs per game over his last 10. You go ahead and stretch it to the last 20 games, 75% hit rate, 15 of his last 20, averaging 18.55 PRAs per game. So again, really good numbers across the board there. Overall this year, a 79% hit rate, including playoffs on this over for Naz Reid. 67 out of 85 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 22.15 PRAs per game overall this year. So like I said, you just see green, 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 a lot of 70% numbers there in plus. And then in the head-to-head department, it's also very, very solid. 6 of his last 7 matchups with the Golden State Warriors, he's cashed the over, averaging 21 PRAs per game across the last 7 matchups. That's an 86% hit rate against Golden State over the last 2 seasons. So really good numbers, including 5 consecutive matchups with the Warriors. They played 4 times this year. He's 4-0 against Golden State this year on this line. So really the numbers across the board are really strong. And Golden State down low, you look, and in some categories they're better than others, but across the board they're not the best defensive team down low. So what's the catch? Why is this player prop where it's at? Well, because we just don't know what Naz Reid's usage is going to be like in this game. Me personally, I think this is going to be similar to what happened in Minnesota Lakers game 1, where they were kind of feeling each other out. The Warriors are kind of in a similar spot to the Lakers where they don't really have a center. They don't really have a lot, like Draymond, Kevin Looney, Jonathan Kuminga. Those are kind of their quote-unquote bigs. Like they have Draymond playing a lot of minutes as their center. They don't really have a lot of size. That sometimes could be a massive advantage for Minnesota with a player like Gobert. It could also be a disadvantage. If Golden State plays small ball, we could see them run Gobert off the court like the Lakers did a couple of times in that series. However, Minnesota, as the series went along, figured it all out, and Gobert actually, including that very pivotal game 5, was very important for Minnesota. So that's where it kind of gets tricky. I don't know what Naz Reid's use is going to be like. You saw earlier in that Lakers series, he got a lot more opportunity. As the series went along and Gobert kind of figured his stuff out within the lineup, he kind of took a back role there. So that's the key thing. If we look at the last 5 games, too, look at his minutes played, it fluctuates. This is the Lakers game I was telling you guys about, that first game. He played almost 31 minutes, had a massive performance. The rest of the series was very up and down, right? Game 3 versus the Lakers, almost 28 minutes again. Then back down to 19.6, 21.4. So kind of all over the place here. That's where the risk is involved. But you do see, game 1, like I said, versus the Lakers, 8 for 12, got plenty of opportunity. Then you get to the end of the series, 1 for 4. Only 4 shot attempts in game 5. So that's where the risk is involved here for Naz Reid. It really just comes down to usage. If he plays a healthy amount of minutes, let's say, at least 25 minutes, we're in a good spot. Is he going to play that much? That's really the big question here. But you also have the insight provided by Outlier. All the data points to this being a really good player prop. You got the EV plus value there. And the insight provided by Outlier, Naz Reid has exceeded 16.5 PRAs in 17 of his last 19 games at home, averaging 25.5 PRAs per game across the last 19 home games. It's an 89% hit rate. So again, really hard for me to really go against this. The data, it's just straight green across the board. Everything points to this being a good player prop. The one risk that I have to tell you guys about, though, is that fact that he may not play enough minutes to cash the bet. That's the risk here. I'm willing to take the risk because the data in the matchup is so solid. But keep in mind there, when in terms of how many units you're going to put, Naz Reid, he could maybe fluctuate in the minutes where he may not play enough minutes to cash the line. So keep that in mind. I still think it's a good player prop, though. Every prop has its risks, but that one is like the key risk with that player prop. And our 5th and final prop in today's slate is Brandon Podziemski of the Golden State Warriors under 15.5 points plus assists. -125 on BetMGM is what I'm getting it for. It's available on multiple sports books for varying odds. The data is pretty strong on this one too. 7 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the under, averaging 14 points plus assists per game over his last 10 games. If we narrow it down to just the playoffs thus far, obviously 7-game series with the Rockets, he cashed the under in 5 of those 7 games in the playoffs thus far. So pretty good numbers on the under here. He had a little bit of a rough series, minus What looks like game 4 that was. Game 4 versus Houston, he went off with 26 points and 5 assists. But really besides that, and I know he did cash the over in game 1 as well, but you had a couple of games there where he just really was struggling versus Houston. And I don't think it's going to get any easier coming into this Minnesota series. Now, overall in the year, he cashed the under at a pretty decent rate, 56% hit rate on the season. 40 out of 72 games, including playoffs, he's cashed the under, averaging 14.88 points plus assists per game overall this year. So like I said, pretty good numbers from an overall standpoint and from a recent standpoint for Podziemski. And from the head-to-head department, 5 of his last 6 matchups with the Minnesota Timberwolves, he's cashed the under. That's an 83% hit rate versus Minnesota dating back to last year, averaging just 12.5 points plus assists per game against the Minnesota Timberwolves since November of 2023. This year, they played 3 times. He's cashed the under in all 3 matchups versus Minnesota this season. And you do have, the thing is, his minutes are on the lower side, right? Averaging 20.6 minutes per game. The one game where he played a healthy amount of minutes, he did cash the over back on November 14th of 2023. That's kind of the key thing here. If you do look at the last 5 games, he's averaging 32 minutes per game. Now, his minutes also fluctuate a great deal. You do see a couple games here, 20.9 minutes, 20.88, but you could see some games where he plays 40 minutes or just shy of 40 minutes. And again, you see the head-to-head data. The reason why I think the unders have been hitting a little bit more consistently is the fact that in these Minnesota matchups, the minutes played have been on the lower side. Only once in the last 6 matchups has he played more than 25 minutes versus Minnesota. So the numbers will be higher. However, it's a very difficult defensive matchup here. You look at Minnesota versus shooting guards, top 10 in both points and assists allowed. Playoff atmosphere on the road in Minnesota. I just don't think it's going to be a big Podziemski game in my personal opinion. Again, always risk involved with these player props, but I like his under in this game. I think Anthony Edwards guarding him or whoever they have guarding him, whoever guards him, Minnesota defensively, one of the best teams in the NBA, they should be able to slow him down. If Golden State's going to have any effectiveness here, it's not going to be through Podziemski. It's probably going to be through Buddy Hield or Curry or Butler. I probably should have led with Curry or Butler. But hey, Buddy Hield was great in Game 7. But guys, that is it for me today. Thank you very much, as always, for watching. One more time, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. I'll be back tomorrow with another NBA player prop video. But until then, guys, I hope you're all winners. Enjoy your Tuesday, and let's go ahead and make some money.